Well, hello, everybody.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Episode 25, June 17th, 2021. 25 of these things?
It's a quarter of a century, just about.
Wow. This has
Well,
been this has been quite the week. We got a very informative episode tonight. We have Tyler Hutchins coming on later. He is running for Sullivan County Sheriff. He's also a local business owner here in Sullivan County. So we're going to have a very interesting night and discussing public service and how important it is. Big news this week.
Yeah,
Big news.
Definitely. I'm sorry, spaced out for a second there. Yeah, definitely. One that impacts me personally, which I'm kind of happy about, is the Affordable Care Act. They ruled against the lawsuit, basically guaranteeing that they can't get rid of coverage for pre-existing conditions if you lose coverage. And when I was younger, I used to be terrified of that because I couldn't leave a job because I would run the risk of running out of medication unless I paid out of pocket.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
The pharmaceutical companies and these insurance companies over years, they've taken our medical system through a loop where people you can't afford it. So something like that has been needed for a long time. And I hope, there's some stuff in it, I'm sure, that's going to have to evolve, because there's so many people that are uninsured and,
And you
Affordable
can't
Care
them
Act.
to be insured if they don't have money to pay for insurance unless you provide it to them.
Well, even with employers, I remember with my employer at one point, trying to get insurance, they're like, well, you could always choose a public option if our option isn't quality to you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I try to do it, through the government, and it would have costed me like triple the amount of money.
Yeah.
Because it's based on all the other scenarios.
The deductible is insane. And honestly, I wish the scenario would be like the companies that screwed us all over with changing like the food pyramid and like poisoning water, doing all this stuff that made us unhealthy, along with our own actions, which that's our own responsibility. But wish those people could be held responsible and take money from them to pay for the insurance of all the people that are sick as a result of eating their crap.
Well,
I know we can't.
Here in America, lawsuits are
and reality
the land of lawsuit. We don't want to have to go to the grocery store and see like a warning label on General Mills cereal, like as if you're buying
black label cornflake.
Yeah, yeah, you got like this X edition, super dangerous
May
oatmeal.
Result in death.
Yeah, like like you're getting Surgeon General warning on your next breakfast items, like you get on a pack of cigarettes. But it's a scary time, you never know what you're. What? A fetus on your Wheaties?
They started using like pictures of like stillborn babies and some things like on ads and stuff. I was like, my God.
Wow, this is getting kind of crazy. But
yeah.
In positive news this week, whether you love. Listen, whether you love or hate Biden, you can't go against some of the things that he's been doing. He's making some progress. And yes, every bit of progress is always going to come with some sort of debate. But some of the key things for me is the student loan cancellation. Now, everything right now is still up in the air as to what exactly that is for. But Biden has now canceled $3 billion in student loans. So
what mine fell under that?
Yeah, like what does that fall under?
I don't know.
There's so many different loopholes. So from what I'm reading, Biden canceled $1 billion of student loans for 72,000 student loan borrowers. Biden canceled another $1.3 billion of student loans for 41,000 borrowers with total and permanent disabilities. Today, $500 million of student loans for 18,000 student loan borrowers under the Borrower Defense and Student Loan Repayment Rule. So I guess there's a lot of these different loopholes here that we got to see. Do I fall under this category? Because I think a lot of Americans that voted him in were assuming that the $50,000 per person cancellation he was talking about was going to directly affect them. But the more that I read into this,
It'll be like
maybe
the PPP loan, where even though they're not supposed to base things on your credit because it's a personal business as opposed to your personal bank account, and then you get a notice saying, "Well, your credit's not high enough, so we're denying you for cover PPP loan."
and that's just totally ludicrous. Like, oh, my credit's bad and I can't pay my bills. You don't qualify. You know, those are the type of people that need it most likely.
It's getting better, but it's not good yet.
Yeah. So like right now, I think of a lot of Americans right now are scratching their heads and they're like probably like contacting their borrowers or whatever and saying, hey, do I still owe you money? I think a lot of people right now are asking this question. Maybe I'm just an idiot and I don't know. From all the research and all the articles I've read, I haven't read anything that specifically speaks to me, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, something else that I've utilized before, and a lot of people already know about it, but unclaimedfunds.com, I think it is. And then you put the state that you live in. Usually you can go on there, and if there are any like old paychecks that for whatever reason through a clerical error didn't get given to you, or there was a refund given on something or a rebate through your insurance and you never claimed it, that money's still just sitting there as on their ledgers. And so if you go into unclaimed funds, you can sometimes get a check from the government for money that you were owed back and you just never received.
Wow. That's some.
I've done it a few times.
Wow. And you actually got some money.
Oh yeah, because it's money that it was technically owed to you. You just didn't receive it for whatever reason, or you had a rebate on your insurance, like all those kind of scenarios that happened after the fact, and then it just kind of fell through the cracks.
Wow. Yeah, so learning something every day. So I got my fingers crossed. Hopefully this student loan stuff is going to help a lot of people, more than I think, but I think $3 billion is a little low for
seeing as how we just printed $1 trillion, you know.
Well, I think it's a little low when you're talking about all of the student debt. If we're talking like what he originally promised, the $50,000 student debt in the very beginning for every, American going to school, there's no way $3 billion is covering that. I mean, we all know the cost of tuition. It's buco bucks. So, but maybe it will go based on income. And then if that's the case, pay my debts. And I don't want to sound like that. I don't want to sound like a lazy piece of shit that's not responsible. But we had this conversation time and time again through our previous podcasts where we discussed, hey, does an 18-year-old, 17-year-old cognitively understand the debt they're about to obtain
on the advice
for the rest of their life
around them? Like everybody tells you to do that too. That's
when you were like 16, 17, you were applying to colleges. How gullible were you to your surroundings? Like mom, dad, cousin, uncle, friend, kind of pushing you and guiding you. And the person I was then, I cannot say is the same person. No. Yet the debts that I accrued, had my parents co-sign, they haven't went away. And I'm kind of like, trade schools and a lot of different things that were kind of like, they were given the side eye in my life.
Yeah, they were always looked down upon. Now that's always where you're going to make the most money lately.
Yeah, they were always looked down upon. Like, oh, you want to be this, or you want to be a mechanic.
Go to BOCES?
Yeah, and there was like a saying back then. I don't even think I could say it publicly, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to. But but that's not the thing. Those kids are making the most money now.
Yeah,
those people that graduated
the job from BOCES that I had was from BOCES. Like the most high-paying jobs that I've had was because of BOCES, and that was after getting a bachelor's degree from an Ivy League school. Granted, it was my choice to switch careers, so I can't blame that on them. But still, I mean, it's a perfect. Plumbers make a lot of money,
and they get the side eye when when a kid's like, I want to be a plumber. You're like yeah, and that's a sad thing. So a lot of kids go to school and they have other ambitions and dreams and they're rushed into it before they're really ready. And a lot of times what happens, not to get back into the educational topic, but it's always relevant, is they end up in a workforce that they totally despise, that they have their degree from. Yeah. And they end up either going back to school or not using the degree that they're thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt. Now, yes, it is personal responsibility, yet the cost of education for, we're supposed to be this smart country.
I was going to go back for nursing until I found out that I would have to take all of my prerequisites again because I didn't have the right prerequisites to go into a science degree, despite having been in the field for 12 years.
Like I said, ludicrousy,
That's not even a word.
Whatever it is, craziness, but it's it's crazy. On to the next topic here.
Yeah. Immigration.
Immigration. So today, Juneteenth becomes a federal holiday. It's another big push for Biden signing this into law.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a very important day for America. I mean, this is celebrating the end of slavery. It's like one of our really sour points in American history. And I think a lot of people, they think when we bring up some of these sour points in American history, it's like a super bad thing. But it really is. If we don't, it's like if we never talk, we don't learn. If we never spoke about the Holocaust, we're giving ourselves open to repeating the past. So I think it's a really important, thing to do.
One thing I recommend, and this is what I did when I lived in Germany, but like if you go down south, like if you live near Gettysburg or if you go near any place where there's a memorial, take the time, even if you grew up there and you've always known it was there and it's boring, whatever, just take the time to go and view that with your own eyes so that you don't forget, so that you do know what people sacrificed for you. Because whether you agree with the conflict or not, the fact is our men and women go over and die.
Mm-hmm.
And they come back in boxes. So it's, it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly.
Even speaking about that, there is people out there, and shoot me if I'm wrong, but there's people who believe the Holocaust never happened.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's big conspiracy against the Germans, and
it was a Russian policy to teach that before the 90s.
Mm-hmm. And there's people out there that still believe the world is flat. So it's crazy. There is craziness. So it's important. And, I can say one thing. They have all these. Listen, if you're ever bored, people, and you want to go on YouTube and watch an Earth flatter person debate a scientist
talking about dinosaurs being probed by aliens and building pyramids with monkeys.
Listen, I worked with this woman years ago who was super religious. Now, nothing against very religious people, but she was super religious. And, according to the Bible, the Earth is only so many years old. Mm-hmm. So dinosaurs couldn't exist for whatever reason. And they didn't exist. So they were fairy tales. Yeah. They weren't here on Earth.
They also sometimes I did homeschooling for 2 years when I was in high school and middle school, or actually, so it was 3 years. And they had a curriculum from a non-denominational Christian company somewhere down south, and everything was great except the science was heavily influenced by creationism, which is fine, but it's not. I believe more in evolution. And they tried to prove that dinosaurs and humans were there at the same time because they had fossilized evidence of their footprints side by side.
Can you listen? We all seen the movie Jurassic Park. Humans back then with a fucking stick were not fighting T-Rexes. I can assure you that. It took us many years to evolve to be able to, fight these creatures. But listen, this isn't a science lesson. That's probably a topic for another day if I were smarter.
Got big because they got big claws, and we need to figure out how to not get gutted.
Mm-hmm. So probably the biggest news this week is opening of New York State. Cuomo made that big announcement earlier this week, and oh my God, I couldn't be more excited. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and be a Cuomo fan because
I'm
I'm not
not.
even. I'm not. But as a New Yorker, as someone who has been a part of this insanity for over 400 days, over a year,
It's so
it
weird, man.
it's over a year. We were kind of frozen in
And
time.
they said like more deaths than World War One, Two, and Vietnam. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're talking about in the United States alone, there was over
Over
500,000
Yeah.
over 500,000 deaths. So, and people don't realize this, but New York State was the hot spot of the entire world. We had more cases in New York City than where it originated in
It's like
China.
watching a red tide going up the screen of the state with all the counties and like having the daily death counts. Like,
It was
how
insane.
freaking
It felt
morbid
like we
is
were
that?
in, and it's still not over. So this isn't like a
No.
celebration of it's over, but it's just like, New York State right now is at the 70% vaccination rate. And there's a lot of people out there that still, it's their choice not to get vaccinated. But with that said, people should still be following social distancing and masking if they're not vaccinated and,
Yeah.
being safe. But just think about that. Going to the gyms, going to restaurants, the movies, amusement parks, whatever, barbershops, and not having that glass plate in front of your face.
Honestly, when
And
I went to Walmart the other day, like it literally, I felt stupid, but I looked around and I remembered exactly where the way it looked the year before, with all the shelves empty in the toilet paper aisle, people being all like like avoiding each other down aisles, wearing masks. People, one guy came into the doctor's office dressed like the Unabomber. Said, "Sorry, I'm just like the Unabomber, but I'm scared." I'm like,
you want to know something too? You knew me in the beginning, and I wasn't as crazy.
oh, and I was a little psycho. I was like,
But
ah.
when it first began, I remember my fiance and we went grocery shopping, and we had the gloves on, which we later found out that was something bad to do. But we had gloves on, we wore the masks, we had the shields, and we were going around Walmart. And when I tell you we were the only people in Walmart, this is during the toilet paper craze, people
Mhm.
looking at us like we lost our goddamn minds. Like they were like standing away from us.
It ended up
And
being my daily entertainment was walking through Walmart, despite it being a risk, because I needed to be around people.
yeah, but it's weird that I remember the beginning, and now that this is kind of weird. Yesterday night, I went to the very first mixer since February 2020. So over a
Yeah,
year ago,
January even.
I went to this Upwift mixer. It's for upstate women in film and television, and it was wild to see people in closer proximity, no shields, no masks.
Photographed a wedding this weekend where no one was wearing masks, and it was like, whoa, we're dancing.
Yeah, like people are dancing at a wedding,
The
and
bars were
I
open,
felt,
like
and it was funny.
nuts, man.
And there's a social thing that happened too. I noticed so many people in cliques more than I've been to many mixers. I've ran mixers, I've done events because we've been away from people for so long. At this mixer, for about a good like 45 minutes to an hour, everybody was still standing away from each other. There wasn't much mingling as like where people they stayed with their people they came with. But as time went on, I started noticing people started to shift around. People became socially like weird. They didn't know
Yeah.
how to talk to each other. Even listen, myself, I was talking to the people I'm familiar with, but that's not what you do at a mixer. You're trying to branch out to meet other people. It took me a while to warm up to the world, and that just shows you something that it's going to take us a while to get. We say that overnight we're going to rip the Band-Aid off and we're going to be healed, but there's something social that happened to all of us that we just didn't realize yet.
We all got damaged. Like we're gonna feel the effects of this for just like people who grew up in the depression. Like they would be the ones who always picked up the penny on the ground and be like, "How could you not pick it up? That's money. Like you're letting money go by." Or one of the ladies I took care of in the nursing home who was in the concentration camp. Her only thing that she has lingering from that was like she couldn't say no to food because of all that time starving. Like that never left her. So like who knows what people are going to have from this year because of all the craziness. But there has also been, I have to say, like as tough and it's been tough as it was, I feel like we grew a lot or at least I grew a lot for myself, working through a lot of stuff. You kind of have to when you're sitting in a room by yourself.
So, given the fact that New York State is now opened, what are you most excited about? You think, like, what are you most excited about that you couldn't do before that you could do now?
Dating without having someone look at you like you're going to kill them if you try to kiss them.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, I think you should still be a little cautious with COVID.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to be like, ah!
Yeah, you still be a little cautious,
like,
but
here's my thing. Like, at this point, if you do believe that vaccines work, and I do think that they do, I have my concerns about this one because of the speed with which it is done, which we've discussed many, many times. But that being said, being somebody who's worked in medical profession, once you got the vaccine, you had the choice. It was your discretion. Do you wear a mask or not? If someone was coughing a bunch of junk up, yeah, I'd put a mask on, even if I wasn't sick, even if I had a vaccine. That's my choice. But to not be forced to do that and not have to think like, I mean, it's common sense. If your body's making antibodies, you shouldn't have to use it anymore if you don't want to.
absolutely. Say for me, I think I'm most excited about doing things like that mixer, like from last night.
Yeah.
In filmmaking, in running the festivals, the excitement is networking, being around people, filming, short films, feature-length films. That's exciting. And when you're being around people, it makes things so much more exciting, so much more fun. And we dealt with a year of like kind of that lonesomeness. So I'm just excited to have a festival in person and get to meet these filmmakers in person. So, I'm shooting for the stars. With that said, anybody that's interested to be a part of our planning committee for Catskill International Film Festival 2022, reach out to me at catskillfilmfest at gmail.com. And, if you're interested or inspired by films, you want to be a part of it, But let's get on to the topic of this week. We're talking about public service. Mm-hmm. Now, public service is something that we always just identify as, cops and firemen and, the Army. But there's so much more to it. And
that's not discounting them either. Like those are huge things, but there's a lot more to it, like you said.
Public service is deeper than that. We're talking about lawyers, we're talking about sheriffs, we're talking about the people that serve you food, volunteers. Without them, we have a kind of like a helpless society. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people in public service, they get the most pressure, and the most scrutiny. So anybody to me that chooses a life in public service, I view them as extremely brave. They're
stupid.
one of the things. Listen, when I was younger, I don't know what it was. I was really into politics. I always said, listen, I always wanted to be in politics. I was like, man, I could run for mayor. I could, and you never know. And every time an election comes around, I get that energy. Like, man, I could do this. I could bullshit anybody. And I just worry about the backlash, because in anything in the public eye, I do films. There's criticism. Anthony and I, we just finished the virtual film festival, and we were getting like hammered by one of the reviews from somebody when they got in for free.
Yeah.
And they wanted like the world on a plate. And like, it's like, dude, we already like sold our souls. We already did this for free. We gave you everything, but it wasn't enough. And it was just, to me, that was like, damn, like, that's what I worry about in the public eye. But I really do give kudos out to people. But like right now with the year we've just had, 2020, law enforcement public service has been really under the gun.
Yeah.
You have things out there like defund the police,
which still, like, don't get me started.
Well, we do. Listen, we want to hear about it. Like, You have things like defund the police.
English
Some major
language
this year.
has meanings. It's
You
got
have
etymology. There's
you
reasons
have
why words are
bail.
used.
You have bail reform, a huge issue going on this year. Stop and frisk. It's coming back. You know, more racial profiling.
Oh yeah, we forgot to finish the wall that was almost done, and then basically invited everybody to come on over so we could send them back. Most of them.
Yeah, and like I said, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, there's always there shouldn't be a side when it comes to
No.
right and wrong. And that's why we go back to Juneteenth that just was passed into federal law. There was 14 Republican senators who voted against it. When I talk about holding your politicians accountable, this is something that should be discussed.
That's just being spiteful because, like, if you're doing something that is you're memorializing something that is a good event that happened in history, like the ending of slavery. Like, isn't that kind
What
of...
I think it is, and this is the ignorance of a lot of people, is they see one thing. I think a lot of people are roping like the political agendas of Black Lives Matter and Juneteenth
of everything that's happened this year
is one and the same. Yet Juneteenth has been talked about for many years before it's really brought to life. Maybe Black Lives Matter and everything that happened last year kind of pushed it with all the racial uprising. But when we're thinking about it, I think people are like, oh, well, if I celebrate Juneteenth, then I can't celebrate 4th of July. When that's totally not the same.
It makes no sense at all. Like,
but I've heard it through the grapevine. I've read it on online blogs. People feel like it's like having Kwanzaa after Christmas or something. You know what I mean? Like we can't do that. We can't celebrate both. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm coming from with it. That's what I've been reading about with it, with the different viewpoints. But really now, you're 14 senators saying, yeah, we don't want this. Got to hold them accountable.
What I don't understand is how they can live with themselves. Like, are any of the laws that we pass these days are like already loaded down with all the extra bills and amendments and little side deals and everything, so that by the time it gets even passed, it's not even the original law.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have a law that, like, was there other stuff attached to this law that we don't know about? Because that may be a factor in this. Because quite often you only hear what they want you to hear on the news. So they'll say, like, this law only does this, but it's got 300,000 other pages. Well, not that many, but
we hit the nail on the head many months ago in the beginning when we were talking about government and other things like that in our podcast, when we said term limits on a lot of these people that are in office.
yeah.
A lot of times you get these people in office, they're there for a million years. They're out of touch with what the average Joe and the average American is.
Just look how they talk.
One of the reasons why I'm really excited about Tyler coming on very shortly is he's got fresh new ideas. He understands what the youth and the world is speaking about and what they kind of want. Now, there's been people, and not to throw shade out there, but there's a lot of people in even local politics and, you know, smaller scale politics. We're not just talking about the president and Congress and Senate. They've been in a position for so many years, but they're talking the same old ideologies.
It's the same thing that happens in organizations. Like, you just have a person who just can't let go, or even like the old diner waitress who's, everybody is like, oh, wow, that one, but she hangs on, keeps on going.
Hangs on, yeah. Can I get some sugar for my coffee? You can get one.
Yep.
So, without any further ado, I don't want to hold this up too long before we get our guest on. I'd like to introduce Tyler Hutchins to everyone. Well, hello.
What's going on?
What's up, brother?
How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, Just came home
Digging
with
the beard.
shopping. Thank you. So, just enjoying outside, getting ready to hop on your show.
Great. So, listen, we're talking about public service. And Stephanie and I were really excited to know what made you want to step into the public life of running for sheriff.
All right, so I'll give as detailed but brief as an explanation as I can. Um, so in September of 2020, all right, so March of 2020 is when the pandemic started. We all kind of got locked down. I was actually overseas when it happened. I was kind of forced to fly home, miss out on a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Came home to kind of a mess. Things weren't looking too good. There was a lot of showing that we weren't ready for something like this. Um, and at the same time, my girlfriend was pregnant, so I had a child coming to the world. So I really had to sit down and think about what the things I had to do for not only myself, but for my family, for the future of my family and friends. And so in September, a couple months later, I got about 12 of my close friends and family together, people who had the similar ideas as me, similar opinions, and similar drives and wants to better their community. And I started a group. That group is called Catskill Freedom Alliance. Um, we're a group of local business owners, local families, local people who grew up around here, who have kids, who have businesses, who are dedicated to this area, to living here, and to improving it, not just occupying it, to it really having a positive effect on it. Um, that group was created because I really realized that I couldn't. You can't better yourself or your own situation without bettering the environment around you and your community. I could grow a garden at my house all I want. I could, try to do everything, be as self-sufficient as possible. But if the area around me doesn't, allow that, the community, the overall attitude of the community and the area doesn't allow me to do that, then, you can't do it on your own. You really need to have the community behind you, your friends behind you, and just the people around you need to have the same ideas as you. Otherwise, you're battling the world, and you're really not going to win that. And then as the pandemic went on, we quickly learned how vital and how important our local government really is when it comes to your mayor, your governor, your sheriff, anybody who is down the hierarchy pole of government in your local government. When it comes to things like this, that's when they really matter, because that's when they're making executive orders. That's when they're making decisions without the public's input. That's when things are just being done on their opinion,
Like little
they
dictators.
think is right, and there's not much public input and not much public opinion considered. um so I saw that happening, and something that I saw that I really admired was a lot of sheriffs coming out and just not physically doing anything, but just voicing their opinion and what they are willing to uphold and not uphold. If any, there were sheriffs of, the state, different counties from the states in Florida, Texas, Wyoming. I tried to look it up, and I got over 100 sheriffs making announcements about executive orders, to the point where I just stopped looking it up, because I said, okay, there's a large majority, over 100 already. Um, just coming out and making an announcement about not wanting to be a part of government overreach and overregulation, and really be a part of the crossing the lines of what's constitutionally right for us as individuals and what's not. And watching other sheriffs come out and voice that made me really not concerned, but I want my community to be like that. I want my community, my sheriffs, to have my back like these other sheriffs had their communities back. And since November, I tried to get in contact with our sheriff's department, to almost not total failure, but I got one little phone call back, promised a scheduled meeting, and here we are a couple months later. I haven't heard anything back, and that was actually for personal reasons and for business reasons. I actually had I was doing some business with the ATF, and I had to personally get a document to the lead law enforcement of my area, and that was a sheriff, and I was unable to do that. Um, so me and my group kind of played around with the idea of me running next year. Not next year, but next elections, because it's a 4-year position. And then we decided that it wasn't really too smart to just pop up out of nowhere in 4 years. That we really had to start getting our name out there now, and get my platform out there and really let people know what I'm about. Um, of course, this is a real election, and I'm really running and expecting votes. Do I deep down really expect to beat Mike Schiff this year? No. Will I be surprised if it happens? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, I think all the people in the county deserve to know that when it comes down to their rights, their safety, there's really somebody who really has their back, who's somebody who you really call, and you know for a fact what their opinion of of the situation. You're gonna know what I stand for. You're gonna know that you're calling somebody who's really gonna protect you. You're not just calling for hopeful help, which a lot of times happens when you call for police and 911. You're calling for help, but you're really being hopeful because you don't really know who's going to show up. You don't really know what's going to happen. You don't know, if there's a situation, you don't know if the police are going to show up and just look at both parties as being maybe wrong and then interpret it. You want to know that they're pulling up with undivided opinions, and just pulling up knowing that they're there to protect your rights and not protect, themselves or their reputation or their agenda. They're really there to protect your constitutional rights. So that's where we're at.
You know what, though? I to add to what you were saying, I think it was a very smart move to run this year, because I wouldn't think it would be too far-fetched to overturn an election when it comes to something like this, especially with 2020. The trust in our law enforcement has gravely been turned over. People do not trust law enforcement based on a lot of the stuff you've seen with the Capitol riots this year, and like kind of letting them storm the Capitol, without all the police brutality that's happening, all the racial unrest that we were talking about time and time again. People don't trust the people that have been in power for years and years and years. And I'm not just saying this about the candidate you'd be running against, but I feel like a lot could happen.
I think I agree that a lot could happen, but I think that, a lot of the things that we have been seeing along those lines also have just been, look, no one's denying that, the brutality happened, but there's been such a shift in generalizing an entire group by the actions of a few that, like, you vilify an entire organization of police officers because of a couple of people who did something wrong. Punish the ones who did the thing wrong. Provide training to the others.
The problem is, and I agree with your statement, is a lot of these departments swept it under the rug, and because they didn't want their reputation to be tarnished, even though they were a few bad apples, they spoiled the bunch.
Like a church.
Well,
also the law enforcement community has become that. They have become such a community separate from the rest of the community that it becomes to the point that when something does go wrong, that it's blue looks out for blue. We always
have the stereo.
Always, no matter what, even when they are wrong. And that's where we go wrong. What I've come to see is the only people who are really against me running, it's for two reasons. And one, it's for law enforcement experience. And two, it's because they are already deeply involved in the local law enforcement community. So they feel like they are losing out on somebody who's going to be looking out for them.
So tell us a little bit more about the experience. Like, what is it that they have an issue with?
So unfortunately, like I said, the law enforcement community has become such a segregated community from the rest of us that they have kind of, for lack of a better term, infiltrated the sheriff's position and made it as a end of the career, high part of the hierarchy of being a police officer. It's not a rank. It's not a part of. It's not a lieutenant. It's not a chief. It's not part of that. It's an elected official position. All right.
Do you need to have law enforcement experience to become a sheriff?
You do not. It is an elected position. It is you have to have certain things that you were never arrested for. You can't be a felon. You couldn't have been charged with like falsifying documents or something. You have to have an honorable criminal background, which I do. And then because it is an elected position, the people of the county get to decide whether or not you're qualified or not. Because the New York State and the federal government has already set the standards for what the sheriff qualifications are. And the qualifications are you just have to be in good standing with criminal law. You have to be a member of the county, and that's it.
Because this is
No, say what you guys say.
No, yeah, this is a surprising information for me. I never knew that. So you're definitely, this is
Yeah, we didn't learn that.
informative.
Oh, so the only constitutional law enforcement agency in the United States is the sheriff's department, and that's why the sheriff's department runs the jail. So anytime anybody in our county gets arrested by any privatized municipal law enforcement department, they have to bring them where?
Yeah.
To this jail, to the sheriffs, because essentially they're privatized security. They're glorified by glorified bounty hunters, because that's what it started out as when law enforcement, back in when America was first established in 1776, between 1776 and about 1890s. That's when the Wild West was. The reason it was the Wild West is because that was the only time America was actually a free country. After that, we signed a treaty because we owed Britain money. That's when America got corporatized. We could go into all that, but that's not what this is about. At the end of the day, that was the sheriff's department was the only constitutional law enforcement agency in the whole entire United States up about to late 1800s. That's when the federal government started to hire bounty hunters, and that's when you get games like Red Dead Redemption. And there's just bounty hunters, wanted, dead or alive. Remember, that's how our federal government used to handle criminals, wanted, dead or alive. They didn't care; they just wanted their body. So as time went on, I'm sure you watch old Western movies. People traveling through towns talk to the sheriff. Well, we don't allow that in this town, because that's how it was. Each sheriff had the ability to set the rules, not only just him, but the community set the rules for that county.
That's why anybody could come in and be the sheriff, even though they weren't a cop.
Yep, because that community has decided the laws, and they decide who. Not only do you get to elect the people who make your laws, you get to elect the person who enforces that law. That's how our democracy works. Because you should be able to elect each branch of the three branches. You elect the people who enforce the laws, you elect the people who make up the laws, and you elect the people who are the judge, who are interpreting the laws when you get in trouble. So that's where that comes from. So with that, the sheriff's responsibility is to protect the citizens' constitutional rights and freedoms, whether they be inferred upon by other citizens, committing crimes against each other, or it be the privatized municipality law enforcement agencies who are violating your rights. Because when it comes down to it, say you're in the town of Fallsburg and they're harassing you and they're doing something illegal, working outside of the color of law, who do you call? A lawyer? If you have a lawyer, that's too late. It's too late. You have to be able to call somebody. That person's supposed to be the sheriff, because they're the top lawman in the area. They're the person who has final say. So if you have another privatized law enforcement agency who is violating your laws, and you call the sheriff, that's who's supposed to protect you, because their main right is to keep the peace and to protect your rights. And if your rights are being violated by another police station, another police agency, then the sheriff is who's supposed to come in. And most people don't even know that. And
I have no idea.
Most of the sheriffs don't even know that, and they don't even respect that. I've had times where I've had, I'm not going to mention what town, but a small local town that, was, listen, since I was 19 years old, they've done multiple things that were straight up illegal, straight up harassment, straight up against the law. Like if I did it, I'd go to jail. And I've called the sheriffs and said, hey, I'm dealing with this. I need you guys to handle it. They told me to call that department. So you're going to tell me the person committing the crime is the person I have to call?
Yeah.
Now that made me feel unsafe. That made me feel like I have nothing, nobody. That made me feel like that means that I straight up got told that means they can do whatever they want, and they have to self-investigate. Yeah.
Basically back off.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. That's it. And that's unacceptable. If there's anything we learned during this last year in the pandemic, it's that not only are law enforcement officers as individuals, not, like you said, you're not going to judge the whole law enforcement community based on what people do, but as individuals, some of them do step over that line on a constant rate. And not only that, but the federal government likes to send down orders from up top that may violate our constitutional rights. And it's the sheriff's responsibility to be that middleman to protect us.
Mm-hmm. So what do you feel is like, what is one issue that you as a sheriff would really try to uphold, and this is the agenda that you're going for?
Okay, so the last two interviews I did, I tried to talk about local stuff, but at the end of the day, I do think that sheriff's the current sheriff and the current sheriff's department is doing a great job um, at accomplishing the things that they wish to accomplish, worrying about small town things, drug dealers, crime, um, any sort of common complaints. What I'm worried about is really when it comes down to is the big things. Is the big things is our protection from police abuse, and from government overreach. Because at the end of the day, there's only one person in the whole state who can and has the power and authority to protect us from that, and that is the sheriff. If the governor wants to make a executive order, guess what? The sheriff has the power. He's the top law enforcement in his area. He has the power to come out and say, "We're not following that." Say Governor Cuomo, for example, when Governor Cuomo came out and said, "You can only have 10 people over for Thanksgiving,"
Yeah.
right? That's 100% unconstitutional right there. And I heard plenty of sheriffs come out. Actually, there's a sheriff, the sheriff of Lewis County in New York. He's actually considered a constitutional sheriff, and which means that he believes all the things that I'm talking about right now. And I'm pretty sure he came out, or another New York sheriff came out and said, "Don't worry, guys. We're not gonna be knocking on your door, making sure you have 10 people at Thanksgiving. Yeah, if you have 50 cars parked outside your house, we're gonna come like, hey, if, you guys mind." Breaking this up a little bit, this and there. But that's what we need. We just communication. Just come out and say, "Hey guys, I know there's this thing that happened that has you all worried and scared and is ruining your holiday and putting fear into you. But here I am as the sheriff to make you feel safe and let you guys know. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. We're not going to allow that in our county."
And so, if you were to become sheriff, like, what are some of the policies that you might put in place to address some of the concerns of, because obviously, like, there's people calling for defund the police, which I think it blows my mind, because you wonder what's going to happen. There's going to be more crime. You get rid of police. That's just how it is. And I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the things that are being proposed that are different from the other guy who's running?
Well, as of right now, we're not. I can't compare anything I do to what Mike Schiff's ideas are, because unfortunately he's been pretty much running unopposed for almost 15 years. Maybe one or two people have slightly came out and challenged him. But so he's never really had to come out and say what he supports, what he does. He already has a pretty heavy backing from the community. Whether it be the local community or the Hasidic community, who's a very large part of our community. So a lot of people feel that losing out on him is losing out on the person that they rely on. You know what I'm saying? No one's here to come in and change what he's doing. I'm just here to add to it. The first part is I want to make a hotline. I want to make a hotline to call when you're in trouble from the police. Obviously, to make sure it doesn't get out of hand, you'd have to set in some sort of, there's already laws in place where you can't make false, reports. So people can't just call every time they're pulled over, like, "I'm being harassed," but if you're really like, "Listen, like, I'm being pulled over. I don't feel safe. I would like a sheriff's deputy to be here just to supervise, just to watch," because you need someone there that you can trust. So that's the first thing, because there's been multiple times where I get pulled over. It's to the point where I don't pull over anymore. I drive to the closest gas station, the closest well-lit place with cameras. And, they're always upset about that. They always say, "Why didn't you stop right away?" Like, I'm not stopping on a dark back road. I'm sorry, for nobody. I don't care if you're a cop. I don't care if you're a firefighter. I don't care if you're somebody, just somebody walking down the street. I'm not stopping on a dark, unlit road with two strangers I don't know who have all the authority to do whatever they want and they're armed. That's not safe for anybody ever. Definitely not safe for the police officers. Why would they want to be in that scenario? So if anything, you should be happy that I drove into the gas station where it's lit. You could see inside my car. My hands are visible. But still, they that because I didn't follow their authority when they first threw their lights on and swerve over right away and say, "Please, officer, well, I'm sorry. What did I do?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely. Yeah.
I have my share of.
Do you think that people, because of like familiarity with Mike Schiff, it's going to be tougher for them to choose a new candidate, or that you're like, not like an uphill battle, but are you trying to reach out to a different generation of people possibly?
I'm trying to reach everybody, man. Like you said, people are going to be upset that their familiarity isn't going to be there. The person that they know. I've read a couple Facebook comments. I saw people comment just when somebody said that I was running. They go, "Well, Mike Schiff has my vote no matter what. No
Yeah,
matter what. You don't even
people
know."
don't like change.
What if he came out and said, "Yo, he's starting a curfew 9 p.m." You didn't even hear. Like no matter what. So people just following these blind party lines and blindly following just
Yes. And that's what you're saying is hitting a nail on the head. And
Yeah.
we've seen it with the larger elections with Senate and president. People follow these party lines blindly, no matter if their candidate is racist, whether they're senile, whatever they are, they just follow these blindly. Divisive. And yeah, you got to find somebody with a backbone and the integrity, and someone that's people right now we're in a critical time of change. So even for these small towns, like there's a lot going on right now in Sullivan County. If you were to ask me the biggest issue right now in law enforcement or crime, it's the narcotics epidemic. It's huge. No matter what county or what town you're in Sullivan County, you're hearing about, fentanyl. You're hearing, heroin on the streets.
Constantly because I take a nap on the side of the road when I'm tired while I'm driving, and they think I'm high on heroin or fentanyl.
So yeah, it's just like, right now we need somebody that is about their word and who has new ideas and is willing to challenge things that haven't been challenged before, because maybe publicly they won't get votes if they say something on behalf of certain things.
And that's another thing is I think as when it comes to narcotics and drugs in our area, like I said, the sheriff's department is doing a pretty good job. I'm not in that law enforcement community, so I don't know the specifics of all the hard work they do. But I know, I read every article, every announcement that's put out. I read the blotter reports. I know that they're doing a lot. I know that Megan Galligan just started like a couple task force, one with like children, some other stuff. She really wants to attack, the drugs around here. She really wants to go after the local dealers. So I think they have a pretty good handle on that. Like I said, I'm not here complaining and saying that what our local law enforcement community, specifically the sheriff's department, is doing is wrong. I'm not. No. But rumor has it, and I have very good sources, that this is Michael Schiff's last year running. So regardless of what people want or like, in 4 years, there's going to be a new face. There's going to be a new face. And is it just going to be someone who's just a year law enforcement community member, someone who's been on a force for 20 years, 25 years? Or is it going to be somebody who actually cares about each citizen and their rights and freedoms, rather than coming in with a biased opinion? Because if you do come in to that elected official position as a sheriff and you have 25 years of law enforcement experience, don't you think you're going to have a little tainted views on things? Don't you think that your 25 years of being on only one side of the battle is going to give you a little discomforted opinion when it comes to things that you're only going to be looking at it from one side? Just like nobody would want somebody who just got out of prison for 25 years to run for sheriff because they spent 25 years on the opposite side. I think it should be looked at the same way. Being a year-long, a lifelong law enforcement officer to then run for sheriff, that's then are you there for the people, or are you there to protect the law enforcement community?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Absolutely.
And the law enforcement community already has enough people looking out for them. They're all together. Blue looks out for blue. It doesn't matter whether you're the sheriff, Monticello PD, a corrections officer, state police. They're going to look out for you if you have a badge. People look out for those people enough. We now need people looking out for me and you and the teachers and the kids and the business owners. And I was just at the gas station the other day. There's a handwritten note posted on the side. I took a picture of it. A woman wrote it who lives in I forgot where she lived, Rock Hill, Woodburn. But she said that her son was being bothered at a bar. Someone flashed a gun to them. They went into the bar and asked them to call the police because, hey, this guy just brandished a weapon and threatened to shoot up this place. And they refused. They refused to even call the police. And wow. I want the community to know, when something like that happens, that you don't have to go inside the bar and ask them to call the police. Call the sheriff's department. I will show up. My deputies will show up. That's what we're there for. We're there for stuff like that. We're there to make the community feel safe.
How important do you think it is for a sheriff and the sheriff deputies to have build a rapport within the community beyond just there in the moment of crisis?
Yeah.
Oh, it's when it comes to real life, it's extremely important. But when it comes to getting elected, it's not important at all, because only 12,000 people are voting for sheriff, and there's 80,000 people who live here. So they don't have to have a good community, a good relationship with 80% of the community. They only have to have the good relationship with that small market that votes. And that's another issue that we can talk about.
That is what you just hit the nail on the head. We were talking about this many episodes ago, so I'm glad you brought it up. Is in a lot of these elections, it's a sad reality that there's a certain demographic of people that are voting, and a lot of that demographic is like from what 45 to 72.
It's a huge
something
portion
like
of the
that.
Population. I've been in it at time to time myself, where I was like, I don't even know who these people are that I'm.
But it's a lot of it. But a lot of the younger
fault.
generation, like this last election, election before, just for the major elections, like the presidential, you'll see people like 18 years old up voting, but it's still the majority of people are voting are the older sometimes population. A lot of them don't even go out to vote anymore.
And that's another reason I'm running, is because what you're saying right now is you can't make complaints, you can't demand change if you're not willing to get up and take some action and actually do it yourself. And just getting up and voting, it's good, it's great, but I've learned that that's not even enough. You got to actually do it. If you can't get it done,
know who you're voting for
yourself. Yeah, you got to get up and do it yourself. And that's what I'm offering right now. Is I know what needs to happen. I know exactly what the people need. I know, I can see where this country and this state and this county is going, and where the problems are, and what needs to fix it. And I'm not asking anybody to do it. I'm willing to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm offering that service to every single person. There's nobody out there who I'm against. There's nobody out there whose ideas I don't agree with. Everybody has the right to express their ideas. Everybody has every right to be free. Everybody has right to feel safe when driving and walking down the road. And as of right now, I don't feel that way. And now I have a child, and I want my daughter to be able to ride her bike through the town and not have to worry about what goes on. I want her to be able to go to the park or go play at the school and not worry about a cop coming and be like, you guys can't be here. You're not allowed to play on this part. Like, what? Like, that's what we're dealing with now.
I wake up with federal agents in your driveway doing a sting operation on your neighbors. That's always fun.
Oh, that's I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that. But no, man, it's we're not in the 90s no more. We're not in early 2000s. Like, I know it doesn't seem that long ago, but things are extremely different. Everybody knows everything. We're me and us three are in totally different places right now, and we're live streaming and talking to each other and talking about issues. There's nothing that's held secret no more. The issues are out there. You can't.
And everybody listening is all over the place.
Everybody's listening. Everybody's got an opinion. The reason I've made it this far and even campaigning and running for sheriff is because of the response that I've gotten from everybody. I thought people were going to look at me like I was nuts, look at me like I was stepping out of line, like I was outside of my comfort zone. But I can't even talk about the amount of support and the amount of excitement that people have gotten just from somebody different. I made this point on a podcast I did like 2 weeks ago. There's only, like I said, there's only 12,000 people, 12,246, something like that voted for sheriff in the last election. There's a little around 76,000 people that live in Sullivan County, about 45,000 registered voters. You count the last 2 years of people moving up here. You count the Hasidic community moving up here as year-round residents. That number is probably more about around 100,000 people that live here, right? 12,000 people voted for sheriff. That is 10%, 12% of the population. So imagine you're with 10 people. You're with 10 people. One of them gets to make all the decisions. And guess what the options for decisions are? Just one. There's one decision. It's Mike Schiff. And one person gets to make that decision. Does that does not sound like freedom? Does not sound like democracy? That does not sound like options? That sounds like for 20 years, we're going to do what this one gentleman wants us to do and how he wants us to do it.
Absolutely.
Sounds like Putin Jr.
You guys were talking about term limits. How about How about unopposed restrictions? How about you can't run 5 elections unopposed?
Hey, listen, I totally agree. This isn't
agree.
anything that against the candidate you're running against, but I feel the same way when you see someone
Yeah.
in office
It's
for
not.
years and years and years. It's inspiring when you see someone that wants to connect with the community on a different level. And like you said, this isn't the 90s anymore, or the early 2000s. There's been a generational change. People now, especially with a lot of the cyber crimes that are happening,
Oh God, yeah.
you have to be in touch with your audience and online.
And now
one
that
of the things,
Bitcoin is coming in, there's a lot more shady stuff that can be done on
so much stuff between the cyberbullying that's going on, the sex offenders out there that are targeting youth using the internet. It's so, and beyond that, it just touching out to your audience and seeing what their general complaints are. Like before, the only way that you would be able to speak to a voter primarily was going to these campaign events. Now, when you do events like this, or even,
Post on Facebook,
it's Facebook.
Instagram, Twitter.
I happened to watch your podcast on Ecstasy Productions last week, and I was entertained because I saw some of the comments on there from people who were just like, they were fans, they were party liners, and you got to give someone a chance if they have something to say. Whether you like the other candidate or not, listen, hey, like this guy has some fresh new ideas, and that's what I'm hoping
it'd
that
be
people give.
It'd be a lot different if this was more of an actual political position that I was running for, where you're coming in with different ideas and different plans, and you want to spend money differently and make different legislation. But that's not what this is about. This is a position that has its duties that have been the same since the position opened up in the 1800s. It's there to make sure that you can travel unmolested, that you have the rights to privacy, that you have the rights to not be subjected to illegal searches and seizures, to not be subjected to harassment. That you have the rights to for all emergency help. I don't know if you notice that when you get your passport, it says it right there. Please allow the carrier of this passport, to be subject to all local emergency help or something like that. Like essentially saying that, like, once you're a member of this country, you have every right to, be helped by the police, no matter where you are, to have the ambulance come and take care of you, no matter where you are, who you are. And that's not the case no more. It's not to be cliche, but it's gone from innocent to proven guilty to like, we know you're guilty. It's just, can we find out what it is, what you're guilty of?
Yeah.
That's
and
how.
Then make up something else if that doesn't work.
I said, like you said, you watched the Ecstasy Productions podcast. I said this on that podcast, that we live in a world that lives in a box, but we travel on a wavelength around it. So where we're sometimes inside of the box, sometimes outside, sometimes inside. So when you're driving from here to Middletown, and 90% of the people on the highway are doing 75 miles an hour to 85 miles an hour, they're all speeding. A police could technically pull over anybody, but that's not who they're pulling over. They're pulling over people who they think they can get for more than speeding. So essentially, they're profiling everybody. Every time you get pulled over, you're not getting pulled over for speeding, because almost everybody speeds. You're getting pulled over because they're using that to get to the next step, which is looking inside your car, asking you questions. Where are you coming from? What do you smell like? What's inside your car? Does it look like you might have something in it? Let me run your plates. Let me run your name. Do you have a record? It's to the point where they don't even pull you over no more. They pull up behind you, run your plates, find out who you are, and then pull you over. So they're not pulling over a speeder. They know they're pulling over Tyler Hutchins.
Yep.
So when
I pulled over one time because somebody was riding my butt, and I got angry. I was like, "This is ridiculous!" So I turned my blinker on and pulled over. They turned the light on and said, "Why'd you pull over so suddenly?" I'm like, "Because you were on my butt." They're like, "We were running your plates." I'm like, "Get glasses?"
And unfortunately, we have people in our government, like our governors and stuff, who authorize stuff like that, which is a complete violation of our rights and privacy. Just because it says, just because it's the public road, so the public doesn't mean the public. The public isn't everybody that's outside. The public is a name of a private group of people, and that private group of people is the United States citizens. If you're not a citizen, if you're not a citizen of the United States, you don't have rights on public land. You don't, because it's not for the public. The public is just a fancy name for a private group of people. So when I'm traveling on public roads, just because it's public and everybody can drive on it, it's still my privately owned road because I pay taxes. There's a reason why you can't drive down the Palisades Interstate Parkway with a commercial license, because you're not allowed to conduct business on a private road without a license, without a proper license. So like, you know how you can't sell lemonade at the park without a permit? Because I technically paid for that park with my taxes. You're now not allowed to profit off of that park because that's my park. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How are you making money off of my park, off of your park? That's not fair. Same thing
Yeah.
when it comes to roads. You're not allowed to make money with your commercial vehicle on a private paid road like the Palisades Interstate Parkway. That's how all public roads are. So when you're traveling on there, it's still your private property. It's still private property. It's not, the Hutchins private property, but it is the public's private property. And I just happen to be a member of that private group that's named the public.
Yeah.
Now you got talking about lawyers and stuff before. I just took my LSAT on Sunday, so I'm going to law school too. So this is no joke. This is no me just trying to get attention and be a sheriff. I'm doing everything I can to have the tools and the power to protect not only me, myself, my friends, my family, my community.
Yeah. Is this like, how will you, given the fact you were talking a lot about trust, you're talking about a lot how people have been done dirty or, been dealt with in such an unprofessional way. How do you, coming into this game here, this career, change or help bridge the gap between these people who have been done wrong?
I believe just me as a person and my character and my reputation, my history just speaks for itself. Anybody who knows anything about me, there's nothing to hide with me. There's no scandals. There's no, private criminal acts. There's nothing. You know me, Charles. You went to high school with me. I was there. I said what I had to say. I won most outspoken in high school. You're talking 10 years ago now, but because clearly, if something needed to be said, whether it be right or wrong, at the moment, it had to be said, because nothing is more important than the truth. And if I feel like something's not truthful, if something's not honest, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm going to say it. And I'm more than welcome to have people call me out on it and stuff. I don't have much of an ego. I can't really have my feelings hurt. So people can bash me on Facebook and say this and say that. At the end of the day, I'm still here for you. You can bash me all you want. I'm still here to protect your rights. I'm here for you.
Ultimately, have you decided a party line, or are you going independent or?
Straight independent. I have refused all endorsements. I want it to be very clear that there is nothing behind my intent besides doing the right thing and protecting everybody. So that way my name isn't connected to this group. And it's like, oh, well, they don't like the Hasidic community, or I'm not behind this group. And it's like, well, that's a Blue Lives Matter group. No, it's nothing. It's me. You want to know what I'm about? I just said it. I'm about protecting everybody's rights. I'm about preventing government overreach from, making unconstitutional laws and executive orders and regulations. And I'm against local law enforcement abusing their power with our local community. Because when you're driving down the road and a police officer pulls up behind you, do you feel safer, or does your heart beat a little faster?
Yep, faster.
And that's not how it should be. When I'm driving down Broadway in Monticello and a state trooper pulls up behind me, my instant moment should change. I should go, whew. Now, if anything happens, somebody tries to jack my car, there's an accident, there's a fight on the corner, I know that everything's going to be handled safely because there's a cop right there. Not, oh my God, what is he going to go out of his way for to harass me and take money from me? Because that's what it is at the end of the day.
That's, you know what, you nailed on the head. And a lot of times, and this isn't to bash police. I have police in my own family and other people that I've known that I'm friends with. Cops. But one of my major things was every time I got pulled over, the first thing that came to mind is like, I'm getting pulled over for this bullshit infraction, and there's real crimes happening around me. Now,
literally, like, right
is one crime worse than another? And that always went through my mind. Like, I'm seeing, this guy selling crack here. There's a prostitute there.
One crime is worse than another, and that's the whole reason that police get to use this word, and that word is discretion. Police have the power of discretion. That means that they can. Like I said, everybody's doing 75 down the highway, but they have the discretion to say, hey, if everyone's doing 75, I can't pull over everybody. Or if everybody decides to park in this one spot, I can't give everyone parking tickets, because guess what? The community made a decision. that in their eyes is safe.
Yeah.
So if the community makes a decision, if the community agrees on something, you know, if like if when there was curfews going on, and say a bar was open at past 9 and everybody wanted to go there. I mean, yeah, the police could go arrest everybody, but what are you gonna do with your relationship to community if you're literally going against what the community wants? You're here to make us safe.
Yeah.
You're not here to tell us what's safe. You're here to make us safe when we decide. I get to decide when I'm safe and when I'm not. You don't get to decide when I feel safe and when I feel unsafe. You know, I get you're pulling me over for a seatbelt, but I decide if I'm safe or not. Yeah, I get that, you know, it's a law in this and that third, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. They're telling you what their definition of safe is for you.
It's like wearing a mask.
And they have that power because of the power of discretion.
Yeah. I think the power of discretion has went over the line with 2020 and into 2021 with all the new rules and regulations. You don't know. A lot of people just don't know the facts.
Yeah.
And that's
like what
and
is the law? What's a right?
I think anybody, yeah, I think right now the best thing any candidate can do is create a platform opened where the community could directly contact them.
Well, I'm hoping for Bagel Fest to happen because I'm going to have not only my organization, Casco Freedom Alliance, but also me as a candidate for Sullivan County Sheriff. I'm going to have a booth. I'm going to have pamphlets. I'm going to have information. I'm going to have contact numbers. So there's, like I said, any questions, if anybody has anything to say about me, it's because that they didn't take the time to contact me and ask me and figure out by themselves.
If you need coverage for the event, let us know, man.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I've been talking to Charles about some other stuff because I am interested in the film industry and all that. But at the end of the day, this is what's most important because, like I said, I just had a kid, and
congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't even live in New York for a while. I was living in Colorado. I
love it out there.
Oh, it's I hate the people there, but it's beautiful out there. And I came home to help take care of my father. He was sick, and then I decided whether I was going to stay or not. And I just love this area so much that I decided to stay and have my family here. And like I said, I couldn't sit here and make complaints and demand change without actually stepping up to the plate myself. Because what is that? What are you at that point when you're just in at home commenting on Facebook or calling in and complaining? You're part of the problem.
Armchair general.
That's what it is. Too many people commenting online without actually stepping forward about how they're going to make a change. So, listen, Tyler, this has been a great discussion. I'm pretty sure we'll have you on again closer to the campaign and the election. But listen, how can our audience find you after this?
So as of right now, I don't have any websites, any phone numbers, anything like that. Because like I said, I'm more going for the following year election because I'm not going to be going against Mike Schiff. I'm going to be going against most likely. I heard maybe the undersheriff, who might be running next year or somebody else. But either way, it'll be a real election. It'll be a battle of new faces, a battle of new ideas. So as of right now, there's not too much. You guys can contact me on Facebook. I don't really have my name on Facebook like that. I'm a pretty private person. So, this is a pretty big deal for me to be out, putting my face and my name out there, my family's business.
We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we appreciate this discussion. I think we've our guests have been informed tonight, and even myself, I've learned a lot of things tonight, and this is what the show is all about.
Oh yeah, man. People got to know. People got to know what the sheriff's an elected position for a reason. It's there for anybody to take hold of, and whoever has the best ideas for keeping our community safe, that's who it goes to. You don't have to have 20 years of living behind a badge to know the difference between right and wrong. Before we go, I want to say one thing. A lot of people say my lack of law enforcement experience. Two things with that. I'm pretty sure we just elected a president not too long ago who had zero political experience at all, and two, I'm 30 years old. I've been held to very strict rules and regulations by the law enforcement community. I've had to live under the rules and the laws of our world for 30 years, and I'm a free man, not in jail. I think if that's not enough law enforcement experience to know the difference between right or wrong, then that means that no one has the experience or knowledge to even vote and decide, then that means that the sheriff's position shouldn't be a voted position. So if somebody has that opinion, then that just means that they personally think that they don't even have an opinion to have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's definitely been interesting, and I totally agree with you. You're stepping into the ring. You deserve it.
If I lived in Sullivan, you'd have my vote, man.
I appreciate it, man. I just
cool.
the guy who owns a restaurant down in the city who said I got his vote. It's the Areskis. Areskis? I don't know. It's a beautiful restaurant, though. You guys should go. He's a good guy.
Check it out.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Nice talking to you, man.
Hey.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. I had a wonderful time speaking to Tyler. And we will definitely keep you guys informed about how the campaign goes, and we'll probably definitely have him on in the future.
Sounds good to me, too.
Until next time, episode 26 next week.